So like like
Exactly.
Stream Deck, yeah.
But like with this keyboard,
Yeah.
it's like totally revolutionized my whole workflow.
Ah, you're making me jealous, man. Hey guys, MixedByJocelin here, and welcome back to the Mixed Opinions podcast. We have a dope guest on for you today. But before we get into that, a big shout out to our sponsors, Audio Movers. They're giving you guys 1 month free of all their plugins that they have on their site. All you have to do is use the code MixedOpinions2024 at checkout, and you'll get 1 month free of all their plugins. So shout out to Audio Movers, respect. But today on the podcast, we've got the man that makes all your tunes knock. We've got DECAP on the podcast. What's going on, bro?
What up, man? Thank you for having me.
Mate, absolute privilege having you on, man. You were on my bucket list from day dot when I decided I want to start this. And yeah, it's dope, man. I'm very gassed to have you on. So where did you say you were today?
So right now I'm actually on the East Coast. I'm in New England in my studio right now.
Nice, cool.
Yep.
It's a nice looking spot. Lots of open light, lots of windows. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't see it in the video, but above me I have some skylights, so there's a lot of good natural light in here during the day.
Yeah,
and it's generally just like a good spot, man. I've always been waiting for a spot I can call my own that has like the right vibe, right aesthetic. So finally I got that.
Is that something that's important to you, like having the natural light coming in? Because obviously it's a tricky thing to sort of navigate with a studio, like sacrificing that open light for like tight acoustics, or being more creative and having that, like, seeing your environment around you.
I mean, obviously I'm someone who cares a lot about sound, and that's definitely something I care a lot about. But at the end of the day, I care more about health and more about inspiration and vibes. So if I'm going to lose a little bit of perfect acoustically treated room vibes for like some great natural light, I'll take it any day of the week.
Yeah, 100%. I mean,
and with that said, like they spent a lot of time. I work with an acoustic designer for the room, so I have all the acoustics really good. This room's kind of a weird shape. It has like a peak above me, and so like there's a lot of room for reflections and windows and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we did the best we could to get it sounding acoustically tight, and it does sound really, really good. It sounds incredible.
I was gonna say, for like the size of the room that you're in, just listening to you through the mic, it sounds pretty tight actually already. I wouldn't expect it to sound like that, how big it is and all the windows and stuff. So it sounds like you've done a cracking job, to be fair. Good stuff.
Yeah, I work with Lou Clark, who's really good at doing the acoustic treatment stuff. So I have it's cut behind me. There's about 2 feet of rock wool.
Okay.
And on the sides there's 1.5 feet of rock wool, and it's all in acoustic fabric. And on the ceiling he built he gave me plans to build this big like triangular diffuser. So, and then you can see there's like 18 panels behind me and all that. So he really did a good job helping me to get it sound real tight.
Yeah, it looks good, man. And that is so important, I think. Obviously you can treat a room, but for guys, like yourself, that are spending all day, every day in your studio, it is so important to be able to get that natural light in and like, see, because it's the quickest way to sort of like bring yourself down when you're just locked in a dark room all day. Like,
oh my God, I can't do that anymore these days. And I used to be the guy locked in the studio all the time, but nowadays I try to get out and about more and live life and try to spend most of my night, like more night dark time here. But when I'm here in the daylight, it's kind of perfect.
Yeah. I've seen from some of the videos, it does look really cool. But just, I mean, most people watching this podcast will know exactly who you are and most of your credentials. But, I'd love to know sort of like how you started in the industry and like your journey to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started out in the game, I started when I was in like 9th grade. That's when I started making beats and, getting into production. And and I've talked about this before, but I was in a rap group and we needed beats.
Right.
And, I had a Tascam Porta 2 4-track tape deck, and, we would basically rap on instrumentals and all that kind of thing. And one day we realized, we want some original beats. So I ended up buying an SP-202
Right.
by Boss, Roland Boss, and I had an HR-16 drum machine. And so I would bang out some drums on the HR-16 and some samples on the SP-202 and record all that on the 4-track, and then we rap on it. I was actually just the other day listening to some of the old 4-track tapes, hearing some of those first beats. I posted some of them on my IG, and I remember the point when it was like, okay, I'm starting to see some potential of this production thing and making
Yeah.
beats thing. So I actually can remember when I hit a point where it was like I actually could see a future in doing it. And so I think that was the beginning. And listening to those old tapes, I can actually feel the inspiration on those tapes in those moments where I was like, I could do this. And so like from there, my goal was to make beats and work with artists and sell beats, that sort of thing. And over time, that's what I did. I got a lot of placements. I worked in the industry and did that and sold beats to independent artists, to signed artists, all that kind of thing. And then I hit a point around 2016 where I wanted to, as an extension, just put out some sounds for producers because I noticed that sample packs were kind of like wavering in
Mm,
volume and in intensity. And I was like, man, I have all these hard hitting drums that I make for myself. I want to put them out. So I put out Drums That Knock Volume 1, and that shit went viral. So
yeah.
that was a way that a lot of producers knew me in the community, through Drums That Knock. Then a couple of years ago, I put out my first plugin, Knock. So yeah, man, the
That's
rest is
yeah. I
history.
mean, yeah, totally. You've become like a household name within the industry, like through those channels that you've created, and like obviously you've been able to create packs and now plugins that enable people just to sort of like get where they want to be like so much faster. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
And not
thank
yeah, and that's the thing because you go through these samples and they're like they're almost there, and did all this stuff, but then especially when it cut down like the hip hop and like electronic route, the samples just load in. You don't really have to touch them. You ain't got to do too much crazy stuff. They're just where they just sit right in the pocket. Do you know what I mean? And it even helps, from a mix perspective. It's like wow, we don't really need to be doing too much to it. Do you know what I mean? They're already sort of like in the place that they want to be. But talking about you using like your tape cassette, and obviously you started making music in an analog realm, right?
Yeah,
So that's clearly like an important part of your process even today. I see photos of your studio. You've got loads of synths around. Using analog gear seems very important to you. Would you say that it's due to the fact that you feel like you have more of a connection to the music when you're using these physical objects?
excuse me. That's a really good question, and I never thought of it that way because when I started out in the analog realm, my thought was I got a computer
Yeah.
soon after I started on the 4-track, and I switched to Cool Edit,
Okay.
Cool Edit Pro, and Cool Edit 96 and all
Yeah.
that. And as soon as I did that, I'm like, yo, this is the next level. Like, I'm on the computer making
Yeah.
music.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was like a very rare thing. And I remember I used to post on forums like undergroundhiphop.com and all that. And people said, man, the computer's not it. Like, it's all about the analog, this and that. But for me, I was like the first generation that embraced computer
Yeah. Yeah.
production. So I did start in an analog world, but once I switched to the computer, the possibilities just seemed endless.
Yeah.
And that was within like the first year I started that I got Cool Edit and all that. So with that said, I've always throughout time, I've always switched from like the computer, making beats in Cool Edit, then switching back to the MPC. I got the MPC 2000 and 2000 XL,
Hmm.
switching to the MPC. And then I went back to Reason.
Right.
Then I switched from Reason back to the MPC 4000, and then from the 4000 I went to Ableton. So I've always kind of went back and forth.
Yeah.
I've been in Ableton for a long time now, and to answer your question, like adding in analog hardware, analog effects, and all that kind of thing, I feel like it definitely adds a different dimension to the sound.
Mm,
I do think it can provide a different sound, and also, in a way, it can bring you closer to a more raw sound, because it's like, my synths over here, you can't see them right now, but
yeah,
they're plugged in, and as soon as I hit the key, I have the sound, and
yeah,
it's analog, and I'm recording audio in instead of going through MIDI and plugins and all that thing. So there can be an immediacy. I think that I will always have a hybrid setup,
yeah.
because there's something that the computer and DAWs bring you that is so elevated over, working completely in the analog realm in terms of workflow and all that.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's the workflow that just is clean throughout. But I feel like using, analog equipment and having that feeling, if it's something that's like obviously accessible to you, to me personally, it's like an inspiration. Because I don't have a setup at the moment, but I was really big into like the Euro rack stuff.
Yep.
And I had a small Euro rack thing, and I would just like the it was like making music in like a totally different it is like a totally different experience than just,
Yep.
just using my door, and it's like the inspiration would just come so naturally. Like I'd never have any idea what I wanted to make. I would just start turning dials and pressing keys, and it would just flow out of me. So, and you can hear that in your music, that you make, like, and it's like, because it's so unique and it transforms and stuff. And I feel like that's from, I might be wrong, but I feel like that's from your heavily influence of the analog realm.
Man, thank you. And you know what? I never thought of it in that way, but I think that there is an influence there, because like when I'm on my Prophet 10 and I'm coming up with a sound, it's like I'm dialing in something in the moment. I don't know what I'm doing. It's just I'm twisting an LFO or a
Yeah,
filter, and something comes out. All right, let's record that. So I guess, to your point, you kind of miss that in the digital realm sometimes, because you might be more, when I'm working more in the digital realm, there's more habitual based decisions. And I think in the analog, you're just trying stuff. So
yeah. It's
like you
almost
said,
too
I haven't,
fast in the digital. It's almost too fast. It's too easy. There's not enough. It doesn't give you room to be really experimental. Do you know what I mean? You can so quickly just get into sort of like a template of like
yeah,
bang, bang, bang. I've made a banger, and you can just recreate that every single time. But you can't do that with analog. Like
right.
every single time you tune that sound, it's different. So
Totally. Totally.
yeah,
Yeah, there is something about analog gear that I do appreciate. And like my mic chain is all analog, and you can't see it in the video, but behind me I have a 500 series rack, and there is something about dialing in a sound with the physical knobs, and hearing how it responds in real time, that you're not loading up a plugin, you're just using what you have right here. So
yeah,
there is something about a hybrid setup that I find really inspiring, for sure. And
yeah,
to be fair, I'll speak to everyone, like, to be 100% transparent, I feel like I could make records that have my sound even with just a laptop.
yeah,
Because I think a lot of new producers feel like they need to get all this analog gear, and I would really say that it's not 100% necessary. I enjoy it, and it's an investment, but I was just talking about this on my stream the other day. I have this synth, I have this synth. Do I need any of it? No, I can do it all with a very simple setup, just a laptop and a microphone and a MIDI keyboard. So you really don't need it, but it's a nice luxury, and it can give you that extra inspiration, for sure.
yeah. And I feel like obviously it's one of these things where you clearly have a passion for it. Like music and music production has got to the point where you can be passionate about making music, but not have a passion for, the analog side of things whatsoever. And you
Totally.
can have a massive scalable career. Do you know what I mean? So it's really boils down to sort of like, I find like collecting hardware is like a bit like when you meet like a passionate watch collector. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's the same sort of
Right.
vibe. It's like you don't. It's just about having it, like, and just owning it, and you appreciate the sound that it does and the story behind those particular units, and like you can tell the story. This record was made on this record was made on it. Like, so if that's
Yep.
not something that you care about, there's no point really like spending the money on it, because there's 100 VSTs out there that can give you a similar sound. Do you know what I mean? So
100%, and I can identify with that for sure. And to be honest, I try to keep that in balance because I know I could just keep buying gear and keep getting the new thing and keep getting all this stuff. I tried to keep it fairly minimalist at the same time because I do find that having a little bit of limitation can be a good thing. Like
yeah.
I have three analog synths here and two over there, but I feel like I could just keep going. But I definitely have the thought process, if I add another synth, I might consider, selling one
Yeah.
and, keeping it minimalist, keeping it streamlined and not going too overboard.
Again, that's it, that's very similar to like watch collectors. Like I've got a few friends and my brother, they're serious watch collectors, and they have
Right.
the exact same mentality. They're like, I like really, really want this watch. This watch I've loved, but I've had it for a long time now. I'll trade that one in and get this watch and have a bit of time with that and experience it and just own it for a while. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
And if you make a bit of money, um, in the process of that, then that's good as well, because again, some of these simps now, they are like that. They do, they don't decrease in value, they appreciate in
Yeah,
value,
there's a lot
especially
of
like,
value.
yeah. So it's important. Talking of your 500 series, I couldn't
Yep,
quite make out what was in it. I was trying to like zoom in on some photos. Is
yep.
it, I saw it looked like was it the TK compressor, or have I got that wrong?
No, no. So in my 500 series, right now I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 8 U's, and
Yeah.
I have 2 empty spaces. I'm just looking for the right last piece. So the first, and I have stereo pairs of all of them. So there's
Right.
4 stereo pairs. The reason I did that is because if I run, percussion loops or drums through it, sometimes I want that wide stereo sound. And so I can affect it on the right and left side.
Mm,
A lot of people work on drums in mono and do stuff after, but I like to work on them in stereo
yeah.
and give it that depth, especially with percussion loops and that sort of thing. So the first two are the color palette. It's a DIYRE, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, the DIYRE color palette. And let's see if I can remember. I have a distortion in the first one because DIYRE is build it yourself. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
3
yeah.
different components. So I have distortion, tape saturation, and there's something I think it was made by Louder Than Liftoff. It's the SSL 4K, I want to say,
Okay, right,
or
yeah.
6K
The
sound or
the
something like
the
that.
the unit that you can on, like, some of the boxes that you can get, and you compress it and it amplifies the sound. Sorta like
Yep.
Silk on, the Neves, like a similar
Yeah.
sort of process. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. It definitely, I feel like it just gives it this shimmer, this
Yeah,
top
yeah,
end
yeah.
shimmer. Maybe a little bit of transformer saturation, but
Mm,
this nice shimmer. So between those three, you can really dial in something special. The next two, the next two is called the radial space heater. And that just gives this warm, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's a tube. It's a tube
right,
saturation.
okay.
Um, I love it. One of mine has been giving me problems since I had it. I returned it, got a new one. It still gives me problems. I think one of the tubes is bad, but even with that, sometimes I can get a unique sound with it,
Did you
with
try
one of
it
the
in
tubes.
a different slot in your unit?
I did. I
Right.
switched the slots. I switched the power, like different power outlets. No matter where I go, I have some issues with it.
Right, fair enough.
I don't know. Maybe I just need. I've even tried returning it and getting a new one. No luck. I don't know. Maybe it's
Weird.
user error.
May
But that thing sounds really good on like 808s. It does lose some of the bass when you run through it, but if you can bring back that, so actually after that I have a pair of API 560s, which is the graphic EQ.
Mm,
So after that, if I lose some of the bass, I can bump it up with the API.
yeah, and you get a lot of
So
control with those units as well, so
the reason why I got the graphic is because it's really good for like snares, hi-hats,
yeah.
kicks, because you can really narrow in on that one
Yeah,
frequency that
or
you
or
want to hit.
even just like curve. You can create your own curve with it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
100%. I do that a lot too.
yeah.
And the last one I have in the chain is the SSL G Comp.
Okay, nice, nice.
Yep, which is just classic.
Yeah, that's the actual SSL one, not
Yep,
like, oh no,
I got the
okay.
SSL G Comp, the one made by
I
SSL.
think that's where what I was looking at, and I got it wrong, 'cause, the TK is sort of like an emulation of that.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, the white one, right?
Yeah, 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 and I absolutely love that unit, and, 'cause I had it in my setup for a while, but yes,
That's the one that's recallable on the computer, right?
They have a system now that you can do that, I believe.
Gotcha.
My one, I got mine years ago. It was the black version. I don't think it was as crazy as that. Um,
Gotcha.
but yeah, it was really cool, and I love the sound of it. And it was a stereo unit as well, so you could run things for it like in a double bus sort of thing, and you could do all of your percussion loops and stuff like that, and you wouldn't need like to buy two separate units or whatever you wanted to do. So
This is the same with this SSL. It's actually it's a double. It's the only one that I have that's a double two-channel unit.
big chunky boy, yeah.
What should I get for my last one, man? Or anyone in the comments, let me
Yeah,
know what else. I have two more empty ones.
yeah. I feel like you've got like a nice broad. You've got your saturator, you've got your color, EQ. I don't know really. It's a you've got
The
you
compression.
Yeah, you've got your compression. I don't know. So maybe like a nice like a different preamp or something like that.
I was thinking about getting like a 1073 pair or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I had the older Rupert Neve one in my unit, and I love that. Like the with the
Okay.
the chunky knob, and it's just had like a different sound to it. But yeah,
Let me
maybe
ask you a question about that actually. So, do you think that the 500 series, if I were to get a mic pre, do you think that's going to be as good sounding as a 1U rack mic pre? I've heard like some differing thoughts about it. I want to hear what's your thought
I
about that?
mean, for me personally, obviously, um, you can be a lot more flexible. You can build like an entire channel strip in like a lunchbox, with all these
Yep,
different colors and all these different sounds from these different companies. So for me, that's like my favorite thing about it. Like,
yep,
is I can totally switch it up. Obviously, and like having like the full unit, like the 12 size or whatever they call it. You're limited just to that, and then if you want to have other things, it's a lot of space. But
yep.
obviously, it's running through a much larger unit, and it's not so compact. So you're
That's the
gonna
thought I had too.
it's
Yep,
definitely gonna affect the sound 100%. But for me, it's about the flexibility, and just having that lunchbox. And even if I was like going to my mate's house or something like that, I could just grab it, go same, and I know the chain that's going in, and you can just, yeah. So for me, it's nice, and like it's like, again, it's sort of like the Simps and the Eurorack. It's like, oh, you can get rid of one, swap it out, borrow a friend's, try stuff. It's like so like modular and just fun to get into. Do you know what I mean? Rather than
true,
just big bits of hardware that sort of like sit in your studio and they don't move. You need
true.
patch cables and all this stuff. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah, 100%.
yeah, my go-to is always like the lunchbox. I've been a big fan of it. Obviously, if you're building a room, you can't beat some of these like classic pre's that just live in the room. But
Yep.
for the smaller studios, especially if you're always traveling and stuff like that, the lunchbox is just seems like key for me. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yep.
I'm a
Yep.
fan
So
of it
like,
anyway.
basically, this one that I built is basically my drum chain,
Yeah, yeah.
drums and knock chain, just to get that color when I'm building my packs. So it gives it that extra touch that you can't quite. It's not quite the same as in the box. You get
Yeah.
that little different feel.
I think that's obviously got something to do with why your packs have become so notorious and like popular, is because you put that extra level of effort into the sounds, into the packs, that you can clearly hear the difference when you listen to other competitive packs. Like this, you can't pinpoint why it is, but talking to you now we understand. Do you know what I mean? Like you're really taking your time with everything and making sure that like they actually do sound amazing. And as you said in one of your videos, they are like fully unique. You've made them all yourself. Do you know what I mean? You're not resampling drums that we've heard a million times. Do you know what I mean? So
Right. Exactly. No, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And that's my approach. Like I want every sound to be a one of one. So when you get it, you'll never hear it anywhere else. Like I might be inspired by something that I've heard and be like, "Oh, how can I put my twist on that?" But it's
mm,
always going to have my twist in my sound, and that sound has never existed before. I created that actual sound from scratch. And a lot of people are, taking sounds and processing them. I don't do any of that. So it's
yeah.
all raw materials. And I think for one, it challenges me to try new things. and also it provides something a little different. So I'm glad people resonate with it.
Yeah, definitely. And well, yes, it's proofs in the pudding, really. I mean, you've been in that splice chart for ever. Like you've got your own room. You know what I mean? You've moved in basically. I can't see it going anywhere anytime soon, to be fair. Like,
Thank you.
yeah, props on the sample topic. Like, you briefly touched on it, but like, where did it like really start for you? Where you were like, "Do you know what? Okay, this is something that I'm gonna do." And how did it scale to the point where you are now? Was it like, was the first pack like or on Splice, or were you like doing it more independently? There's so many questions, really.
Yeah, yeah, I can answer that. So, how it all started was I had conversations with some producers in the industry that are my friends and people making records, and it was always a conversation of which DAW hits harder, what thing makes it hit hard, and this and that. And I was just like, man, like I just want to make a pack of hard hitting drums so people aren't concerned about what DAW they use, like to make their sounds hit hard and this and that. I'm just gonna make drums that knock. And
Yeah,
so like I put out my first pack and I was just like, it was just my gift to the community. I just wanted to put it out there. I had no idea it was gonna blow up like it did and be on all these huge records and all this stuff. I just wanted to put it out just for fun and just to support the community. And so that was the beginning, but once I saw the reaction that it got, then I was like, "Oh shit, I'm going to really dive into the sound design thing and really get it down and learn everything I can learn about it, get more creative with my sound design." And so I think seeing the response, it was like that's what inspired me to take it further and to take it to the next level
yeah,
and to just be the best sound designer I could be. So that was what did it. And in terms of how I released it, I first just put out everything independently, and I do still put out everything independently on drumsthatknock.com
yeah,
and pluginsatknock.com. So it's my own website. And through putting it out independently, that's how I built a relationship with Splice, and they wanted to be a distributor. And so I've had a really good relationship with Splice and putting out my packs. But it's also on my own website
yeah,
too.
yeah,
So
yeah.
a little bit.
Would you say, I feel like, obviously the samples themselves, that's what's, created the longevity of the series and why they're still super relevant and, arguably the most relevant sample pack, on the planet right now. But I think, would you say a lot of the early on success was due to the branding and the name? Because it's super clever and it's so simple. Like, was that like a thought process for you, or was it something that you just stumbled into?
Oh man, thank you. So that's a really interesting question. Really good question. I had the idea for drums that knock, and I knew it was pretty clever. And I was like, "Oh yeah, this is kind of cool. Drums that knock,"
Mm,
But I had no idea if it would resonate or not. Like, I think that I knew the sounds were sounds that I liked, and but other people liked it too, and I was really grateful. And so I think that made me want to double down on the branding. And I had a bunch of packs that had their own cartoons that went with them. And
mm,
so you can actually see them on YouTube. Like there's all these drums that knock cartoon characters that I came up with. And I work with an animator to bring these characters to life. So I think I kind of went in on the branding, which were definitely a big reason why it took off, because I wanted to make it catchy and to make it interesting and fun and just explore that side of it. So I think I think producers really like the quality because I put a lot of time into it, but I do think the branding helped elevate it also, definitely.
yeah. I mean, because just I'm just sitting here trying to think of like other packs and just remembering the name of the pack. I can't. I know the producers, but like
Right.
the name of the pack, just, what I mean. And it's almost like, DECAP is a big name in the industry, but like the plugins that knock brand is almost like as big as you. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's
Thank
sort
you.
of like the goal really for any sort of like entrepreneur business owner, do you know what I mean, building something bigger than yourself and like, you know, scaling it to some, because that, you know, that's how you reach like unlimited potential. Because if you're working within yourself, you have a ceiling that you can hit, do you know what I mean? There's only so much one person can do, but you've built a brand that surpasses that now. And that leads me on to my next question. Obviously, you know, I'm a fan of plugins that knock. You know, I'm a fan of knock. I've made a YouTube video on it, and
Thank you.
you know, I'm not just saying this because you know, we're talking today. Like, it literally is on my mix template and lives on my drum bus, and I use it in like every mix, and I love it. Um,
Amazing.
but you know, I did notice again. I've got an eye for branding. It's something that I study, and you know, obviously, I feel like strategically you've named the company umbrella Plugins That Knock, and I'm quite curious to know, like, is there anything in the pipeline, an expansion of, you know, of DECAP in the plugin realm? Like, is there going to be another plugin down the line?
Man, thank you. First of all, I'm really glad that you're enjoying it, man. I wanted to I wanted to make knock work in such a way where a beginner could love it and someone who's been in the game and knows their shit loves it too. And I wanted to make it for all levels.
Mm,
So that really means a lot. Thank you for that. And in terms of building plugins that knock, that was my goal, definitely. In terms of the future and plugins, I have been playing around with ideas and I just want to take my time with it. I my goal is to build up plugins that knock and come out with more plugins, but really I don't want to just put out a plugin for the sake of putting out a
of
plugin. Like
course.
knock took a lot of thought and you know, it was kind of a slam dunk for my brand with, you know, decap drums at knock and everything. So knock was kind of like the obvious first plugin and then I put out knock clipper, which is just a clipper part of it.
Yeah,
So that was kind of like the obvious move. And the next move, when I make it, I want to make sure that it's something that will be truly helpful and inspiring for producers. I don't want to rush it. So that's why I haven't put out a plugin in a couple of years. I'm just taking my time to think through what the next one is. So
well,
nothing I can talk about yet, but it's definitely on my mind every day.
yeah, and I feel like, you know, that's important because, you know, you've created something that is unique, and as you said, can be used across the board. Like, that was one thing like that drew me to it, even though I'm an experienced engineer and I've spent a great amount of time learning about how all of these tools work. I personally still want to grab a plugin that I don't have to overthink with, and I
Oh,
can just feel it, and I'm like, cool, that sounds good. I don't have to, you know, break down the science behind how I'm turning this
yes.
into a sound, right? I just want to turn it on and go, yeah, this needs more saturation. This needs to hit more. Do you know what I mean? And that knock perfectly sort of encapsulated that for me. And so when I first loaded it up, it was my old assistant that was like, bro, like, you have to try this plugin. Like, and I was like, cool.
Oh, that's good.
Right. And I was like, straight away, I was like, shit. Like, one of my favorite things is the actual like punch
Okay.
dial, which is a it's like, is it working on like it's like an envelope almost, is it like a kind of shortening some of the sound, creating more of a hit? Is that how it's working?
Yep. Yep. It's like a transient shaper
Yeah,
where
yeah.
it's giving it a little bit of punch and shaping the sound a little bit too
Yeah,
on the end.
which
Yep.
is nice. And then obviously you have the sub that pairs with that, so then you can continue and you can pull that out and get a little bit more length out of it
Yep.
whilst getting the knock, so you can still maintain that balance. Because, you know, sometimes you pull it up and you're like, okay, cool, but it's lost maybe some of the roundness, but you can get that back
Sure.
with the sub dial. So yeah, super cool. And you know, as everything decap, quite unique. And yeah, it's really cool. But yeah, definitely wanted to ask that because I could see, like, obviously straight away, like, plugins that not all right, cool. You know, 5-10 years time that I'm probably gonna have, you know, a bunch of different plugins in this chain. But it's good that you're not just like rushing into it and being like,
Yeah.
yeah, that was a bag, let's do another one. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it's so important to me to continue with the same mindset I did with DTK And I'm not gonna put anything out if I can't come out with the right thing. Like, it just has to be the right thing, and, I want my dream is to put out plugins that when a producer gets it, they're like, "Yes, this is what I want." And like you just said, like, that simplicity, that was my goal, because I can be, like, really technical and do all kinds of technical stuff, but I feel like I make the best music when it's all right in front of me. It's simple. It's straightforward. I could just get on the keys and start playing or tweak a knob. Like, it's just, I want it to be easy. So drums that knock, as soon as you load up a break or a drum sound, if you're like, oh, it just needs more punch, you just turn a couple knobs and you're good. Like,
Yeah, straight away.
that's how I intended it, and I'm glad it is that way. And I think any plugins I do are going to be in that sort of realm.
Yeah, and and it is such a night and day difference as well. So especially for like the beginner or the novice, it's like they can feel it straight away, and it excites them and inspires them because they can finally get that like big like Kanye West sounding drum kit that they want, but they've struggled for so long. Because I remember when I first started making tracks and stuff like that. I was never scared of releasing it. I would just put it out and I would learn from my mistakes, and that would always be something that popped up like, yeah, it's really cool beat, but like I'm struggling to hear the drums coming through. Do you know what I mean? So then I would sit there and be like, okay,
Sure.
how can I get the drums to come through? Like, and you're creating plugins that sort of like not take away from that, because the people that care and want to learn will still go out there and learn, but bridging the gap, in a more
Totally.
like understand it and ununderstandable way. Like, and
Right.
that's something that I think is coming through a lot more recently. Like a person that I was sort of like compare you to, obviously I know he's a friend of yours as well, is Devon, and his plugin line. It's a
Yeah.
recreation of the software and like the processes that as professionals we all understand, but you're making it in a way that's not too simplified, but way more understandable from just like an avid producer or like beginner. Do you know what I mean? Like, especially with
Totally.
the um Devon's plugin line, it's like he's totally re-explaining compression just with the plugin.
I love that. Like HMD Rosetta was his first plugin, and like, if you look at it, it explains what you're doing. So if you're a beginner looking at that, it's like, oh, that's what that does. Oh, I can get that sound, and then they can learn from there.
Exactly.
And his whole brand has helped me, Devon. He's helping producers get to that next point where it could be for a beginner or someone who knows exactly what they're doing, who wants like a different way to look at EQ. So
Yeah.
it's really dope what Devon's doing, man.
Yeah, 100%. Like for me, I'm severely dyslexic, so the sort of like stereotypical learning route isn't always the best thing for me. Like, I'm much more of a visual learner. So plugins like your plugin and Devon's plugin, they lean into that way of learning that I just things
Oh
just
man.
click for me. Do you know what I mean? So it's like a very and I feel like a lot of there's a massive amount of creative people out there that do suffer from these learning difficulties, and you're giving it to them rather than because the way that we've been using these plugins before, it's archaic technology that has been around for decades and decades and decades, that were developed by scientists and geniuses. Not like saying that you and Devon aren't in your own right geniuses, but like the visual element of to it can be so much harder to understand. If you pull up Devon's EQ and then you pull up an SSL EQ, you're like, I don't understand. For a novice, it's like, where these dials, like, what am I even looking at here? But like there, it's explained even in the terminology. Like, where you punch, you're not saying the word transformer or gate or whatever it is. You're saying punch, and it's like punch. That's what I'm looking for. Bang, click,
Right.
go. So
Man, thank you for expressing that, and I never thought of it in that way, how it could be helpful for people who maybe have some sort of a learning disability or something like that. I never thought of it in those terms, but it makes sense, and no matter what the situation is, it should be easy and fun.
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
It doesn't need to be difficult. Like, you don't need to be a brain scientist to make a melody that moves someone's soul. You know what I mean? Like, I look at it like, how can we do what we're really here to do, and that's to make great music.
yeah,
If you want the drums to smack, it should be easy. Like, why does it have to be hard?
exactly.
And
Yeah,
if you want to EQ something, why does it have to be all this crazy stuff? Like,
yeah,
I know how to use an SSL EQ, but I've been in the game a long time, but I would never force someone to go through what I went through in order to make
Yeah,
maybe the next song that's gonna be a hit
you have
or
to
the
learn
next
the
song.
science behind it, which again might not necessarily be a bad thing. And for a lot of people,
Sure.
obviously, it's a passion, and they want to learn about the frequency span and what things do what and how things sound where. But again, if you can just like pull up a plugin and it's like air, I want air, bang, it's done.
Right.
Like that. That to me is important, and it's like,
Well,
go on.
it's sorry for interrupting,
No, 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 no. It's
but
all
I
right.
just wanna get off this one idea, like, as a sound designer, like, I know how to dial in a sine wave and turn that into a snare and a kick.
Mm,
But when I'm making music, I'm not trying to be a sound designer.
yeah,
When I'm making music, I have zero desire to make a snare, zero desire to make a kick, zero desire to build patches from scratch most of the time. Generally, what I want to do is go in there with some pre-made sounds and load them in my DAW. I want to plug in. I don't want to be doing a science brain analysis with a
yeah,
plugin. I want to just turn a couple knobs and get my desired result because the main goal is to transfer that feeling to the
yeah.
program or to your ears, you know?
With as least
So
friction as possible.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's
So
it.
that's why like HMD Rosetta EQ, knock, all that. Like I want simplicity. And
Yeah,
I always applaud developers that can take the math, take the genius plugin idea and turn it into something really simple. Like
yeah, yeah.
that's for me, that's what we want to do.
And not only that, it's like even for the people like myself that do genuinely care about the science and want to learn all of the nitty gritty and all the different details, but
Yep.
struggle to learn in a conventional manner. It's like
Yep.
it's like a bridge to get there. So okay, I can use this plugin and I can start to understand it, and then I can take that knowledge and apply it to, so now I open up an SSL and I'm like, okay, yeah, 10K is giving me that air XYZ. Oh, I can use this plugin and I'm getting that same feeling of punch. Like
Yep.
and so it's like a almost like a stepping stone into taking it to that next level of like knowledge for any like budding engineers or mix engineers, master engineers that really want to get into that sound design and like sculpting frequency. So yeah, it's really cool
Absolutely.
because it's something that obviously I always struggled with. And it wasn't until I sort of like learned a way of learning for myself that was like I managed to actually scale and understand this stuff. Because just hand me a textbook, I wouldn't be able to tell you anything, like, honest
Yeah.
to God. Like, I'm like lost.
Textbook guy either.
Yeah, yeah, but if you put it in
Yeah.
front of me and you just let me play with it and like understand it in my own terminology, I'll be able to use it like anyone else can. So super cool. And I wanted to obviously talk about that and give you your props from that perspective, because to me, that was what was so special about that plugin. And obviously, and the plugins that are coming out. And I think it's important that the industry understands that and leans into that. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't need to be this like super technical, like, gatekeeping, you need to do all of this to be able to use this properly. Like, it doesn't need to be that way. It's just about creating great music and giving you the tools to be able to do that. So yeah, props for that.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So coming off of the plugin a little bit, obviously you, aside from making brilliant sample packs, you know a plugin that is rocked the industry, you also do make very, very creative and interesting music as well. And it's, yeah, I'm a fan of it. I love that sort of like up tempo experimental electronic music that you make. And I'm quite interested to know like what your sort of like process is when it comes to getting inspired to make that music. Like, is there any sort of thing, does it just come to you, or do you find yourself like doing certain things to get you into that zone?
Man, that's a good question. It always changes from time to time, but normally I just sit down and see what happens.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be when I'm doing sound design that I'll be like, "Oh man, I got this idea for a song," and just do it. Or it could be sitting in the studio with an artist and working on something more for them.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I release my own solo music under DECAP and put it out on Spotify and everything. So it changes all the time. I think even just stepping away for a while and doing something totally different.
Mm,
When I come back, I might be inspired. I find that inspiration for me comes in waves.
yeah.
Like Sometimes I might make something, be like, okay, this is cool, this is cool. Then I'll make something that I'm like, this is it. This is what I'm really feeling. And yeah, just it comes in waves,
Yeah.
and I think just that consistency is something that keeps me inspired.
Yeah.
Stepping away, but also having that consistency of making music.
Do you feel like, due to the fact that your like portfolio, as a sort of like um as a sort of entrepreneur, is quite diverse, because you have all of these different streams of like revenue and projects that you work on, it enables you to sort of like, you don't have to just sit and grind like, I have to make like beats today, like I have to make beats today. You know what I mean? It was one thing that I'm a big fan, and I know he's a friend of yours, of Eldre. And because I love lo-fi, I love making that's like the genre that I like making. And I saw in one of his videos, he was like, yeah, like sometimes I just know I have to sit down and I have to make a beat today. And I'm like, that to me feels like that's going to be the quickest way of losing inspiration. So do you feel like having that like vast sort of like multiple sort of projects going on helps you with, I don't have to make a beat today, but I'll make a beat when I'm inspired, sort of thing?
Yeah, me and Eldre talk about that a lot. Like it's interesting as a producer, like how we're creating our careers out of nothing. Like we're not
Mm,
a lot of us are not signed to a major label. Like we release independent music and that sort of thing. So we have to be self motivated. So luckily I have a lot of other avenues for income. And that a lot of my income has been through service, like serving the producer community and helping others to make the best records they can. And so when it comes down to me, I there's a flexibility because I'm not relying on getting a placement with some artist to pay
mm,
my bills, because I built my own brand and I have my own things that are generating income for me. So music is like it's labor of love. Like I enjoy it. That's how I started. That's really what the thing is for me, and I enjoy it. So I don't have to necessarily force it. But I will say that if I haven't been working on music for a while, how I get back into it is, all right, time to sit down and make something. Sit down
yeah.
and make something. Whether I'm feeling it or not, just sit down and make
Yeah.
something.
Whatever it is,
Um,
just get it done.
yeah, and through that, a lot of times inspiration just comes through you because you're in that momentum, and when you're in that momentum, ideas will come through you.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it's always the best idea to wait till the exact moment you feel inspired to make something. I think sometimes just building up that momentum, even if the first tracks you make are not all that great, that's where it can be powerful. I was in a live stream one day and I came up with this idea for producers who are struggling with inspiration. Make it, mix it down, and move on. It's called the
Mm.
3M technique.
I
And
love that.
just sit down, make something, mix it down, and move on. Don't judge it. It doesn't matter if you think it's good or bad. Just save it into wherever you save your beats, and then move on. Do
Yeah.
something else. So
Like
I think
actually
that
finish it.
keeps it flowing.
Yeah. That
Finish it to the best of your ability.
yeah,
Like it doesn't have to be perfect. Finish it within 1 hour,
yeah,
or like give yourself an hour. Give yourself 30 minutes. Set a timer and be like, all right, I'm going to finish this beat in 25 minutes, or I'm going to finish this in an hour and a half, whatever you're comfortable with. But it's that
100%.
process of creating that gets the
Mm.
inspiration moving and flowing, I
And
feel.
it just you learn so much from that process as well. Like I feel like that is a massive part of like where the success that I've managed to carve for myself. Out of everyone that I knew, I would actually finish stuff and like prioritize it, and then that's how I sort of like got into mixing, because I cared so much about actually just finishing it, and then whatever it was I'd put it out, because I don't know. Maybe I just don't have that part of me, but I've never been scared of just like putting things out. I know a lot of people do,
Yeah,
but I just don't have that fear. You know what I mean? I
right.
don't mind if people are in my comments saying this is shit or this is trash. Like that is like fuel for the fire for me. So doing that and being consistent with it is where I've learned all of this stuff. And I think that's like obviously some advice that any producers or engineers that are watching this podcast can take away from it, is like, don't just let that shit those unfinished projects sit on your hard drive. Like, it is the worst way of progressing. Do you know what I mean? Even, even if you're like struggling to finish it and you don't even like the beat anymore, you'll learn so much from just pushing through and getting it done. And most of the time you end up liking it anyway when you actually like finish the record. So yeah.
Totally. That's good advice, man. And me too. I've never had that feeling of like being afraid to put out something. With that said, I don't like everything I make. So a lot of stuff I make, I'm like, I could never release this. But if it's something I like, I never have that fear of putting it out. I don't struggle with like imposter syndrome or a lot of those things. So
Yeah.
I can relate to you on that front. Like I've just never had that mental
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't mind releasing something and people don't like it. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah, and it's important. I think it's something that you can learn as well, like, or maybe not learn, but just get a tough skin too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And as a creator in any sort of realm, it's something that you will experience, like
Yep.
just because of how society's built up and exists. But like it's important to not like let that hold you back. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So, could I
Because
be?
and it's mainly if I like it. If it's something I like, I don't care too much what other people think. If I'm questioning it and I put it out and other people are like, nah, that ain't it, then I'd be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have put that one out. But I try to release stuff that I actually like to
Yeah.
some level.
That's
Yeah.
it. That's all you can do, really, and that's
Yeah.
all you should do. Can I put a pause on this for just 1 second? I'm absolutely desperate for the toilet, and then we'll.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Oh, sorry. I don't want it to distract me from the conversation, and I like
Yeah.
downed like 2 liters of water after the boxing. So
Oh,
like,
bro, no worries,
I'll be
man.
literally
Let's
one
go.
second though. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I really
Oh, no,
appreciate that.
you're good, man. You're good.
Yeah, where I do all this exercise now, and I'm trying to stay like super hydrated, it just like flushes
Yeah.
straight through me. um,
Man, exercise is such an important thing, bro. It's so for me, it's so difficult to get my ass to the gym, but it's something that's a priority just to stay fit and
yeah,
everything.
I mean, for
Yeah.
me, talking about being inspired and stuff like that, the gym for me is like what keeps me inspired. Like that's the quickest
Really?
way. Yeah, yeah. If I don't go to the gym for like a week, my whole demeanor changes. Like I become so negative, and you couldn't force me to make music. And like where I now mix majority for like clients and stuff like that, I almost feel like it's my responsibility to go to the gym to make sure that my head is in the right place to do their mix in the best light. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
So, and it's night and day, obvious. Like
Wow.
how different I am as a person if I'm not like training. If you see what I'm saying. Obviously, I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not even like the fittest guy in the world. You know what I mean? I just like lifting heavy weights. But
right.
yeah, it's just like such an important part of
I
my day now. Like
I wish it was for me, but for me, it like I know it's healthy for me, and I know it's a great thing, but I do I don't necessarily feel better when I go to the gym. I feel more spent after I go to the gym. I'm like,
right,
ah.
yeah.
But just the fact that I did it for myself, it feels like a positive thing for that reason. So,
Yeah. And I think obviously it comes with consistency and not and exercise is different for everyone, It
yeah,
really depends on like what you enjoy doing, I like I've got 5 brothers, and we're all very very different in the way that we like to work out and train, like totally different types. Like my
right,
one of my brothers is a big rower. He loves rowing and boxing and stuff like that. He hates doing weight training. He will not do it whatsoever. Me, on the other
okay,
hand, I couldn't think of anything worse than rowing for an hour, but I loved
yeah,
picking up heavy weights. So it's just finding
right,
that niche, really. Um,
totally,
yeah, but anyway, we're not here to talk about exercise. We're here to talk about music. Um,
yep,
one we was talking a bit about, obviously, you wear a lot of hats, and as a entrepreneur, which you definitely are, you have lots of different projects going on at the time. What would you say is like one of the challenges of being a brand, being self-employed, and trying to not just make music, but like owning a business and trying to run it?
yeah. So, I think the biggest challenge with all the positives of being self-employed, like there's so many positives, but
Mm,
not getting into that, the challenges are when I wake up, it's completely up to me to move the brand forward. Um, so like I've had to train myself to always think in terms of what's next. And so
mm,
there's never a moment of being settled and feeling like I got it all figured out or I can just clock in. There's none of that. I'm always thinking about what's the next move? How can I innovate? How can I step it up? How can I be creative? So um there is that. I wouldn't call it pressure because I enjoy that and I've always enjoyed that. And I'm a guy that's not afraid of the unknown.
yeah,
So being able to not knowing what's coming doesn't scare me. It's not I can't turn my brain off all the way. I
right,
have to always be thinking, always be getting inspired, always be in that flow.
yeah.
So I would say that that could be a challenge, but I like it.
Yeah, it can. Yeah, it definitely can be quite draining, and it becomes quite obvious when, if I meet up with some friends from my school or something like that. Not comparing myself to obviously your workload, but like as someone that is, self-employed and you're the one steering the ship. It's quite different. They're sitting in the pub and they seem to be able just to totally switch off from their work
Yeah.
life and just enjoy the moment. I personally am like, can never. Do you know what I mean? I'm constantly like, man, I want to get DECAP on the podcast.
Yeah.
What's the route? How can I do that? I'm constantly thinking like I can't just sit there and watch a TV show. Like I'm just always working, which again, yeah, like you said, is like a blessing, but at the same time can be quite, tiring on like your mental state, you know?
I can totally relate with like a lot of us entrepreneurs are super driven and innovative and we want to keep going because there is the more work you put in, the more results you get. So it's self-fulfilling in that way.
Mm,
One thing I will say is every morning I practice meditation
okay.
because I noticed that I spend a lot of time. It's called metacognition. Like I look at my own thoughts and see what I'm doing with my mind, and I spend a lot of time thinking, okay, how can I move things forward? Because I get inspired. I'll drink a cup of coffee and I'm like ready to go, and I'm like, all right, what's the next move? What am the podcast or like plugin or whatever, new piece of music, new email I want to reach out to somebody, like whatever it is. My brain's always going, like you said. But I balance that out with meditation because I find that that's something that keeps me grounded and it's something that allows me to enjoy the moment. And actually, as funny as it sounds, it might sound to some people, I spend time letting go of that entrepreneur spirit because I find that when I let all that busyness go and let go of everything, like it comes back in a new kind of more clear, more harmonized way. So I've been experimenting with meditation for like over a decade now, and it's been something that to answer something you asked earlier, like what keeps me inspired. It's definitely something that inspires me, like that process of letting go, even though there's so much mental thinking and acting and all that.
So the process of your meditation is to not try to remove the thought, but observe the thought. Is that right?
Totally.
Okay.
So like someone was asking me about this the other day. One of the goals of meditating is to almost overcome time because time is something we all are faced with in this world,
Right.
right? And when there's time, there's things to be done. And that's just practical, right? We have things we need to do every day. But if you become over obsessed with the things you need to do, it actually makes your brain function worse
Yeah.
and it creates stress, which creates dysfunction in the body. So meditation for me is bringing the mind and the heart and everything into coherence. So when you do that, it's almost like I know I have all these things I need to do, but I can almost let them go and bring the energy from like thinking about the future back to the present moment. And I find that when I can bring the energy to the present moment, I can think about the future in a more, I guess, concise way, in a
Right.
more clear, way and I can react better. And so it's almost like a mental karate. So meditation helps you to stay fluid and move with the moment. So
Wow.
that's something that that's a cheat code that I found in like the last decade or even more.
It is something that I've dabbled in the past,
Yep.
and I definitely did see benefits, like, I'd come out, I've tried the meditation, 10, 20 minutes, nothing too crazy, and I would feel this sort of, like, crazy sort of like relief and like almost euphoric feeling. And I definitely would see, and it's something that I need to bring back in. Like, but it's always it's like maybe yourself with the exercising. It's like the back of the mind sort of thing. But I definitely would feel myself being a lot more productive, and my thoughts felt more structured after it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like rather than like
Yeah.
waking up and just being like bombarded by my phone and it's chaos from the jump. So yeah, definitely something that maybe I should like check it out again because you know not to get too overly deep on the podcast, but like it is something that I suffer with like anxiety and stuff like that, and you know obviously even like constantly trying to progress, constantly trying to do better. Maybe it is something that I should look into again. But yeah, do you have any like suggestions on like where to start, like like how to do it, or like is there like a YouTube channel? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm glad you expressed what you said. You said kind of like it is with me working out. Like meditating is it's not like to this day, I'll wake up in the morning and actively resist meditating because that part of me that I've trained myself to be, go-getter, active, productive, moving things forward, creative, like all these positive things that I've trained myself to be are the same things that tell me not to meditate because it's like, no, no, I'm
Yeah,
good. I'm good. Let's go. We got things to do. We got
yeah,
shit to do. But I have to, even though I like that part of myself and I wouldn't want it to go away, like I appreciate that. I still have to sit down and work through that because that part of me can be a little imbalanced because there is an element of you got to sit down and look at your thoughts and get really clear and not just be go 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 all the time. And I find that I have, because I've told myself that I'm going to meditate every morning, even if it's just a half hour or an hour or whatever. Even though I don't want to do it, I sit down and do it anyways. Even though I don't want to hit the gym 3 days a week, I still do it anyways. And
yeah,
it's setting those requirements for yourself that keeps you on a certain track.
yeah, and the
So,
discipline of
mm,
doing it as well. And but
yep,
and I could see that actually you describing it like that, I can now understand why I struggle to do it because
mhm,
it is almost like meditating is almost like a conflict of your personality. Do you see what I'm saying? But what you're
yeah.
saying is it's necessary.
It feels like a conflict before you do it, but
Yeah.
once you sit down, you're like, "Oh my god, I needed that."
Yeah. Yeah, no,
So it's
yeah.
the ego that tells you it's a conflict, but then, like, there's a part of your true creative self that comes through the ego. And then what happens after the meditation, I'm not, like, more zen and less productive, I'm just as productive, but a little more clear, a little more sharp, a little more on point. And even if I thought I was great, there might have been, like, a certain emotion that I released or a certain, intensity or whatever. And to answer your question, like how do I recommend people get into it? One thing you can start by doing is set your timer on your phone for 5 minutes, and just literally focus on your breath and your heartbeat and follow your breath.
Yeah.
And some people say, "Oh, I would meditate, but I'm not good at it." There's actually no such thing as not being good at meditating. You can literally just focus on your breath and your heartbeat, and anytime a thought comes up, you let it go.
Yeah.
And you can think about letting a thought go as weight training. Every time you let a thought go, you're strengthening your practice.
Yeah, yeah, of course, yeah. And, again, uh, it's sort of a conflict of like saying, "Oh, I'm not good at meditating." Like that's the reason why you need to meditate. Just, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? That's really cool. And
There's actually no such thing. Any meditation's better than than no
Yeah.
meditation. Any workout is better than no workout.
Yeah, I definitely have where in my limited experience of it, I definitely can see the benefits of it. And it's even funny sometimes, like my girlfriend will know like when I've been meditating and when I haven't been, and she will say to me, like, have you been meditating recently? And I'll be like, no, and she's like,
Uh-huh.
I can tell. Do you know what I
Yep.
mean? Like, and
Yeah,
then I'm like,
totally.
you know,
It's a superpower, and also like there's all these studies. The brain creates dopamine. It actually creates DMT
yeah,
and all these things. And meditating helps to regulate things out of balance and activate DMT and pleasure chemicals and all that. So it can be very powerful for creativity and business
that's
and even
yeah,
just managing any internal conflicts we have, anxieties, anything like that. It can be very good for.
yeah. No, that's dope, man. Yeah, I really appreciate you talking to me about that. Actually, you've definitely like inspired me again to like tomorrow morning I'm just gonna bang it. I like writing things down. Like if I write it down and I don't do it, I don't tick it off my list, it makes me feel shit about myself. So I'll write meditating down and then I'll you know what I mean? Like and then I can
Oh,
yeah.
and I just anyone watching, like, don't feel like you have to do it for a long time. Start with 2 minutes.
Mm,
And then if you want to put your phone on a timer for this is actually a trick when your personality wants to fight you meditating or going to the gym. When you get to the gym, be like, all right, I'm gonna do 10 minutes unless I want to keep going. But
yeah.
usually once you're in it, you don't want to get out of it.
No, yeah, that's
It's
it.
just when you're out of it, you don't want to get in it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
You
that's
know?
it. Yeah,
Even
yeah,
with things yeah.
yeah, I never regret a gym session. Do you know what I mean? You
Uh-huh.
never yeah, you
Same.
never regret a meditation session, clearly. Yeah, that's dope, man. I'm definitely gonna definitely try that, and I really appreciate that. I love the fact that I love it when conversations on this podcast, especially like just tander off like that. Like that's sort of
100%.
why I try to keep it so loose and open because I really do. My goal for this, especially as well, isn't just to like you know a load of knowledge, you know what I mean? X, Y, Z, like because there's like an unlimited amount of information out there. My goal is always to sort of like tap into the person, you know, and get a better understanding of who they are. But that being said, I do want to ask you a more tech question because I know people will
Let's
be like,
go.
"I can't believe you didn't ask the question." But and we asked this on all the questions. You've been through this with Devon as well. But like, what are your three favorite plugins at the moment? And I want to keep it like mix sort of related, not instruments. Like, what are your three favorite mix plugins at the moment that like are living in your chain?
Golfos.
Okay.
What else? Mix related plugins. I love Isotope Imager.
Yeah, I have this plugin. I've used it a little bit, but I've been seeing a lot about that recently, and I'm like, okay, maybe I need to revisit this and like
It's my
dive into
favorite
it.
sounding imager. It just sounds so good.
Yeah,
Um, I've tried a lot of different ones, and Isotope Imager for me is the strongest one.
right.
And I mean, mix related. I'm gonna go left and say the plugin Loader by
Okay.
Max for Live Loader for Ableton.
What does that plugin do?
Oh my god. It is a Max for Live plugin. I think it's I don't know, maybe like 10, $15. I have no idea, but it has revolutionized my workflow in Ableton. Like I literally cannot use any other DAW after using Loader.
Right.
Loader allows you to map any plugin you want to your keyboard.
Okay.
So for example, if I want to load up knock, I hit K on my keyboard. If I want to load up
Oh wow.
Omnisphere, I hold down Shift O. So like the way I have it set up is any synth or key related plugin, I have Shift plus T for Trillion. Shift whatever. And if I want an Ableton stock EQ, I hit E. If I want to load up Sketch Cassette, I hit S. If I
No
want to load up
way.
RC20, I hit 2. So it allows you to be working and hit a quick key to get a plugin, so I don't have to go into the menu and
Search it.
select it.
Yeah. So
It
like
has
Stream Deck.
revolutionized my
So like like
Exactly.
Stream Deck, yeah.
But, like, with this keyboard,
Yeah.
it's, like, totally revolutionized my whole workflow.
Ah, you're
Um,
making me jealous, man. I want that now.
that's why I can't use other DAWs. Ableton is just too good for me right now.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I do feel like Ableton, again, to my like limited knowledge of the DAW, I have used it. But it does seem to like lean heavily into the workflow element of using the DAW. Like it's all about, even like the sampling, how easy they made sampling, that sort of like
Right,
when they did that, I again sitting on Logic or Pro Tools or whatever, I'm like, for fuck's sake, like what, why
right,
can't it be that simple on my door? Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I Ableton's workflow is amazing,
Yeah.
and, I mean, I used FL Studio for a while too, and it is a great DAW, it has a great workflow, but after this loader thing, I can't use anything else, bro.
That does sound cool. I mean, the Stream Deck is something that I've been yeah, it's been sitting in my Amazon basket for ages because I'm like, I just want to be able to tap and do certain things. Like even like, with like exporting like batch files and stuff like that. Obviously you can set the whole sort of like route and stuff and it can do multiple things just with a touch. And I
I've
yeah,
done it in Pro Tools before with Stream Deck. I have a Stream Deck on my desk.
yeah.
I'm using it mostly for live streaming and video, but I have experimented with it in, like, Pro Tools for batch processing and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, yeah, once you've, like, finished a mix and you have, like, you have set deliverables that you have to, like, hand into the label or whatever, you could set
Yep,
all of that stuff up and just go bang, and then it will, you could get really complicated with it and you could print the main, print
yep,
just the instrumental, print the a cappella, and it will, like, do it all, like, in a sequence for you. Do you know what I mean? So you can just hit it and then
right.
walk away. So, yeah.
That's really dope. I mean, that is dope. So do you say you're mostly in Pro Tools?
I use Pro Tools, but I mostly use Logic because
Logic, okay, cool.
I'm
Gotcha.
like obviously I'm my main thing is as a mix engineer, but I am a producer as well, and I much prefer like the workflow hybrid of
Sure.
using Logic with that. And I sort of I grew up using. I first started on FL, then moved to Cubase, and then my mentor was like, I want you to use Logic. And I was trying to get him to play bass on one of my songs. And he was like, I'm going to play the bass on the song, but I'm only going to use Logic. So, and like force my hand into like finishing
Okay,
the song in Logic. And then ever since then, I haven't really turned back. But I used Pro Tools and I got into Pro Tools when I did the Dolby Atmos certification with engineers. It's
okay.
Ali's company, and that was all on Pro Tools and stuff. And yeah, definitely start to see the benefit. And I don't, do you know Gorav, don't you?
Yeah,
Gorav?
yeah, I know
Yeah, yeah.
Gorev, yep,
Yeah, I was literally just messaging Gorav like, "Oh, bro, like we need to talk about Pro Tools because I want to start making videos on it and stuff like that." So
yeah,
I'm having conversations with him. He's a good friend of mine, so obviously he's London based as well. But
right.
yeah, yeah.
That's
So
the question. So you're in Logic most of the time, but you do some stuff in Pro Tools, like, in terms of, like, mixing and engineering, do you find any benefit going to Pro Tools, or do you find you're able to get most of it done in Logic? What do you miss in Logic that you get in Pro Tools and
I
that sort of thing?
mean, I feel like one just being like getting into like the super nitty gritty of it, and like this is a quite a polarizing topic. I feel like the engine is better in Pro Tools, um, and and like just in terms of like the sound quality and stuff, um, and the way that it's set up in terms of like the bus selection and the layout when you are mixing uh, and only mixing, I feel like can be beneficial for
Got
the
you.
process in terms of like how clear it can be. But that being said, and this is sort of like, you know, flipping it on its head, like I just know Logic, like I could like like I know how to breathe. So
Yep,
the workflow for me just is more seamless on Logic.
right.
And for me when I mix, I am not one of these guys that will just like mix your record and have it done. Like if I feel like the kick is shit, like I'm gonna go on knock and grab one of your kicks and probably replace the kick and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes I'll
Yeah,
even play stuff in. And I try my goal as an engineer is to elevate the sound, not just mix the sound. So
Right.
Logic, just the workflow just makes more sense to me like that. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
Oh
And
yeah.
I want to go back to the sound engine thing. Do you think it's the stock plugins, or what is it about the sound that you prefer in PT over
Yeah,
Logic?
I'm not sure. I just feel like there's just like a roundness and a softness to Logic that I don't that I prefer, and I would prefer Pro Tools. Pro Tools
Okay.
just feels clearer. Like, and
Mm,
and this might just be me just bugging, or like a perceived effect. Um, but it probably is to do with the plugins themselves and the way that it
yeah,
runs through, because obviously Pro Tools is just all about like the top end quality. So you know what I mean. They've got a lot more years in the game,
yeah.
with making it from the ground up. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I do feel like all the doors are catching up though, and they're slowly becoming like all on par with each other. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mm,
other than like FL, which I still feel like has a lot of downfalls when it comes to like tracking and mixing. Like I just
mm.
find that workflow, like making beats, like we're off, but like
Yeah.
the workflow in like
Never been a fan
yeah,
of tracking in FL either.
yeah. It's just like kind of like it doesn't really feel smooth or right to me. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know.
Some people make great records tracking in FL. It's not for me.
I mean, whatever, it doesn't really matter. All this stuff is like
100%.
so nitty gritty. But at the end of the day, it just boils down to you as a person. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and you can do anything with the tools that you know. Do you know what I mean? So, and I think
Absolutely.
that's important. Like, don't really get. I try not to get into sort of like the argument too much about the DAWs because for
Right.
me, it's just like, mate, if you make good tunes, like that's all that matters. The only thing that does wind me up a little bit sometimes is like with FL. I think they've sorted it now because I haven't really been experiencing it. But there used to
Yep.
be, especially when it first came out on Mac, there was like a lag, and like all the
Mm,
stems would be like slightly off, like from the one.
really?
Yeah, and
Okay.
so I would have to like zoom in because if they tracked the beat like in Logic. They tracked it
Mm.
in Logic to just like the WAV, and then I got sent the stems. Like they would be slightly like off and things like that. But I
I
don't know if
think
they do. I don't know if that's a problem anymore. But it was like little
I
things
think
like
they
that,
fixed that. I'm pretty sure I haven't experienced that.
right? I think it might have
I
been like when it wasn't native to Mac, and it was like maybe it had to go through like a rendering thing, a conversion thing to get it into
Mm,
Mac. But
got you,
yeah,
got
it
you.
was it was irritating. I don't know, like you probably don't do it, but like sometimes like you get a crack off of YouTube or whatever just to track to, and then they'll buy the beat after. Like that always has like that little lag. It was that sort of experience. You
I
just-
know that MP3 files, if you convert I don't know if this still happens, but back in the day, if you convert an MP3 to a wave, there's always, like, a little bit of a silence in the
yeah, the
beginning, so
buffer, yeah.
yeah,
Maybe that's what it maybe that's what it was, but they've sorted it.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah. So, but to be fair, as I said, it's I don't mind it. The only other thing with like FL users, I just feel like they love making things way too hot. So I just get sent like these blocks, and then I'm like, right, okay, I'm gonna have to fix this now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, it's something I found because a lot of people used to talk about the sound engine in FL even when nothing was on the master, like, it just slaps, it
Yeah,
hits hard. But in Ableton, the same thing doesn't so people had different ideas about the sound. What I realized is the way sound comes out of FL, at least on my setup, I think it might be different depending on what audio driver you use, but if I make a beat in a drum pattern in FL and turn it up so it's clipping on the meter, it doesn't have the hard clip sound. It just gets infinitely louder.
right.
But if you're in Ableton, for example, as you turn it up, it has
A wall.
a
Yeah,
hard limit
yeah.
sound. Yeah, like a brick wall. And so as you turn it up, it crunches the sound. So FL will just keep getting louder until you mix it down. Then when you mix it down, you're hearing that hard clipped audio.
Right.
So
So they don't
it's
even they don't even
coming out.
know they're doing it.
They don't know they're doing it. So that's why I think that they put a default limiter on the master, so that's not happening.
Yeah,
Um,
but that limiter though as well, and the clipper is like just it is unmatched. There is a sound there, and it's very frustrating, especially if you mix in like Logic or Pro Tools or something, because you're trying to emulate that sound. Do you know what I
yep.
mean? That the artist and the producer have got so used to hearing. I do feel like actually like on your clipper you can get
Yep.
quite close to that sound,
Yeah. That's
which is nice.
that was part of the inspiration building the Clipper on Knock and Knock Clipper. Like I listened to Fruity Soft Clipper and wanted to have it sound just as good.
Mm.
So that was like one of the motivations. Cause I got tired of people saying, "Oh, that Fruity Soft Clipper, this and that." I'm like, well, now there's something that's out there that has like that similar character.
Yeah, exactly. I was saying for the longest time, I was like, why can't they just like some clever guy make a standalone version of it? Like, do you know what I mean? So, and here we are.
Totally,
We basically
totally.
got it. And obviously now you sell that as like an independent thing. Like, it's easy for people just to like get hold of it. But I
Right.
have to say, one other clipper that I'm really, really enjoying at the moment, I don't know if you've used it, is the Gold Clip.
Oh yeah, man. Gold Clip is crazy. A shout out to Ryan, man.
Yeah,
He Swab Digital.
yeah.
He's a friend of mine, and he's a dope plugin maker, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
really dope.
The gold clip was crazy. When I first put that on, I was like, let me try it. I think I heard like Tizio or someone talking about it, and I was like,
Yep.
let me try it. And I was like, holy shit, this is very cool.
Yeah.
So,
It's a great sounding mastering clipper, really dope. He I think he modeled that kind of after the Lavery Gold. So
yeah,
yeah, really, really cool idea.
yeah. Very,
And
very cool.
people love Gold Clip.
Yeah.
Really dope.
It's
Yep.
it's on the like more expensive side of like a clipper, but
Yep.
I definitely think it's worth the money. Like especially if you
Yep.
care about that kind of thing. One talking of plugins, like one company that I really like, I was speaking to Devon about. I'm just quite interested to know if you've heard of him and what he does. Is Analog Obsession? Have you heard of him?
You know, I've heard the name, but I don't think I'm familiar with plugins. What plugins did they do?
So it's just a one guy,
Okay.
based out of Turkey, and he does like emulations of like famous pieces of gear. So he's got like the SSL.
I
Um,
think someone told me about that. I
yeah,
think I have to check that out.
yeah. He's really cool. I just find it so interesting because he makes them for free. Like,
Okay.
and then he just has like a Patreon, but like he puts so much effort into obviously the actual design, and like the his SSL emulation is called the Buster SE. I actually
Yep.
use that like all the time. Like that sits
Okay.
on my master bus like all the time, and I have like obviously the UAD one and all this stuff, but I actually really really like the sound of that one. So it's just something that I was quite interested in as someone that is in that plugin realm. I just wanted to know if it was something, because over here in the UK, like he's super popular. Like loads of people use his stuff.
I'm
Mostly because
pretty
it's
sure
free.
someone sent me his stuff. I haven't had a chance to check it out yet, but
Yeah.
I'll definitely have to check that out.
Yeah, you should check it out, man. And he's a super nice guy. Do you know what I mean? Like just to talk to, and yeah, he's cool. He doesn't speak the best English, but because I really wanted to get him on just to talk to him, but we did like
Dope.
a written sort of interview, which was nice. But yeah,
Dope.
so I mean, moving on from the plugins, that was really cool and very unique. I didn't hear the Pro Q3, which is normally in there, but so
Oh,
nice.
I mean, that's another I love Pro Q3.
Yeah,
I
everyone
use
does.
Yep.
It's become just like a staple that you cannot live without now, just because of how diverse like that plugin can be and like all of its use forms. And I think it's a really good plugin to learn EQ on as well, like if
Yep.
you're like a beginner, because it's so like visually like there with everything, and like the freeze functionality of it and stuff. Super cool.
It does so much. Like I don't even think I fully learned everything about that plugin.
Mm.
It does so much.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, it's
Another plugin that I love is Track Spacer.
right. Yeah,
Waves Factory Track Spacer.
yeah.
That I forgot to mention that one. Really good mixing plugin.
Have you tried Spectre?
Yes, I have. Spectre's dope too.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like Spectre a lot.
I
Yep.
started using that as a technique I picked up of watching one of Jason Joshua's videos, and I literally just like
Yep.
he literally just like pulls the whole band across and just saturates everything at
Oh,
like
that's dope.
3 dB, and you do get
Mm,
such a nice feeling from it. Like, and then maybe you can tone it down with like Soothe or something like that, some of the harmonics that it adds, but like
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, it was really, really, and I tried it, and I was like, "That's really, really cool." And it was a use format I never even thought about before. You know what I mean? For it, so
Yep,
just like saturating the whole track basically from like top to bottom. But
that's dope.
yeah, very, very, very cool plugin. One thing that I wanted to talk to you about was out, and you've sort of like briefly mentioned it a little bit, but like outside of the studio, like where do you like? Obviously, we can't live in the studio. Doing things outside is very important, and I like to talk about it on the show because I like to encourage like young producers and young engineers and stuff to that it is important to not live in the studio. Like, what do you like to get up to outside when you're not creating music?
Yeah, I'm definitely not the guy that lives in the studio nowadays. Like I just couldn't do that. It's just not my vibe. I try to live a balanced life. I try to get outside, get out into nature, go for walks, like you said, going to the gym, being social. Like I have a social life. I like to get out and hang out with friends and get out, travel. Um, all that stuff I like to do. Like, being in the studio is great, but I think that if you don't live a balanced life, burnout is on the radar, and
Yeah,
I can't deal with burnout. Like it's just not at this point in time. Like it's not beneficial because it just sets you back. So I like to balance my time in many different ways.
yeah,
Getting out in nature, friends, all that stuff.
yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. Like,